Admiral Hannah Kim stood at the observation deck of the TSS Endeavour, Earth's most advanced starship. The vast emptiness of space surrounded her as the ship approached the Galactic Council station. Her reflection in the viewport showed a woman with determination etched into every line of her face. 25 years of military service had prepared her for many things, but first contact with an advanced alien civilization was something else entirely. "Admiral, we're receiving docking instructions," said Lieutenant Park from his station. Hannah nodded. "Proceed as directed. Remember, everyone, we represent all of humanity today." The Endeavour slowed as it approached the massive space station. The structure was unlike anything humans had ever built. A sprawling complex of interconnected rings that spun slowly, creating artificial gravity. Its surface gleamed with an iridescent material unknown to Earth science. When the delegation of 12 humans stepped from their airlock into the Council station, Hannah felt a moment of vertigo. The gravity was slightly stronger than Earth's, and the air carried unfamiliar scents. "Welcome to Harmony Station," said a tall, slender being with pale blue skin. "I am Blazon Cyril. Please follow me to the Council chambers." As they walked through corridors filled with aliens of various shapes and sizes, Hannah noticed how many turned to stare at the humans. Some with curiosity, others with what looked like disdain. "They're watching us like zoo animals," whispered Dr. Jun Lee, Earth's leading xenobiologist. Hannah kept her expression neutral. "Stay focused." The Council chamber was a vast amphitheater. At its center stood a round table with 7 ornate chairs, each occupied by a different alien species. Above them, holographic displays showed star maps and data streams Hannah couldn't interpret. Cyril guided the humans to a small platform facing the Council table. "The delegation from Earth may now address the Galactic Council." Hannah stepped forward, her voice steady. "Honorable representatives of the Galactic Council, I bring greetings from Earth. We come seeking friendship and knowledge, hoping to join the interstellar community as equals." The chamber fell silent. Then a being with insectoid features leaned forward. Its mandibles clicked as it spoke, the words translated through devices in the human's ears. "I am Counselor Zivixar of the Vespian Hive. We have studied your transmissions for decades. Your species has barely mastered rudimentary interplanetary travel. You've had nuclear weapons for less than a century and still fight wars over resources and ideology." The mandibles clicked again. "Full membership status is impossible." Hannah maintained her composure despite the dismissal. "With respect, humanity has made significant technological advances in recent years. Our unified government." A squat, amphibian-like creature interrupted. "Your United Nations is hardly unified. We observe your conflicts, your borders, your national rivalries. No, Admiral Kim, your species is not ready." One by one, each council member listed humanity's shortcomings: environmental damage, social inequality, technological limitations. Hannah stood straight through it all, even as she felt the sting of their condescension. Finally, a being that resembled a tall, ethereal humanoid with 4 arms raised a hand for silence. "I am High Counselor Ilara of the Lumidian Collective. While my colleagues' concerns are valid, we cannot ignore that your species has reached the stars through your own efforts. This deserves recognition." Hannah felt a spark of hope. "Therefore," Ilara continued, "we offer Earth Protectorate status. You will receive limited access to Council space lanes and basic technological assistance. In return, you will abide by Council regulations regarding expansion, weapons development, and resource extraction." Hannah's heart sank. Protectorate status meant Earth would be little more than a colony, subject to Council authority without any real voice in galactic affairs. "May I ask what these regulations entail?" she inquired carefully. A reptilian counselor with gleaming scales pushed a data crystal across the table. "All terms are here. Most importantly, your military development will be monitored and restricted. For your own safety, of course." Hannah understood the message behind the words. Earth would be kept weak, dependent on council protection. She wanted to refuse outright, but knew that wasn't her decision to make. The people of Earth thank the council for this consideration. We will review your terms and respond accordingly. Back aboard the Endeavor, Hannah called an emergency meeting with her team. They're treating us like children, growled General Jun Park, head of Earth's Unified Defense Force. Dr. Lee nodded. Their technology is centuries beyond ours. Did you see their propulsion systems, their energy production, which they have no intention of sharing? Hannah said, placing the data crystal on the table. I've reviewed their terms. The technology transfers are limited to environmental systems and basic medical applications, nothing that would help us advance significantly. So we're supposed to stay in our little corner of the galaxy and be good little humans? Asked Ambassador Sung. Hannah's eyes narrowed. That's what they expect. But it's not what we're going to do. 3 weeks later, Hannah stood before the United Nations Security Council in New York. The chamber was packed, with leaders from every nation present for this historic briefing. Admiral Kim, you're saying we should accept these terms? Asked the Secretary General, disbelief evident in her voice. I'm saying we should appear to accept them, Hannah clarified. The Galactic Council views us as primitive, barely worthy of notice. They see our divisions, our conflicts, and dismiss us as children playing with dangerous toys. She activated a holographic display showing the Council species and their known territories. Their arrogance is our advantage. They don't believe we're capable of advancement without their guidance. What exactly are you proposing? Asked the Chinese premier. Hannah straightened. Operation Hidden Dawn. We publicly accept protectorate status while secretly accelerating our technological development and military readiness. We show them what they expect to see, a compliant, grateful Earth, while we prepare for the day we can negotiate as equals. The room erupted in debate. Some leaders called it deceptive, dangerous. Others saw the wisdom in Hannah's approach. They've made it clear they won't respect us, Hannah continued over the arguments. Respect must be earned. We need time, and we need unity like never before in human history. After hours of debate, the Security Council voted. The decision was nearly unanimous. Earth would accept protectorate status publicly, while working in secret to overcome the technological gap. Within months, the Terran Defense Initiative was formed. Underground bases were constructed beneath the lunar surface, shielded from Council observation. The world's top scientists and engineers were recruited for the classified program. As Hannah inspected the first lunar facility, walking through tunnels carved deep into the moon's crust, she felt both pride and apprehension. Humanity was taking an enormous risk. The first shipyard will be operational in 18 months, reported Colonel Kang, leading her through the massive construction area. Council monitoring drones only scan the public bases. This entire section is invisible to them. Hannah nodded, watching as workers installed advanced manufacturing systems. How are the reverse engineering efforts proceeding? Better than expected. The Council's transport ships use principles we can adapt. Dr. Min believes we can develop our own version within 5 years. Hannah stopped at a viewpoint overlooking a massive cavern where the framework of a ship was taking shape. Not a diplomatic vessel like the Endeavor, but something new. A warship designed by humans, but incorporating what little they had learned from Council technology. They think we're children, Hannah murmured, more to herself than to Colonel Kang. Children grow up, and sometimes they surpass their parents. As Earth publicly celebrated its new status in the galactic community, beneath the surface of the moon, humanity prepared for a future the Council never anticipated. Dr. Jin Park's hands moved quickly across the holographic control panel as alarms flashed red throughout the lab. The experimental drive core was becoming unstable again, its bright blue glow pulsing dangerously. 25 years of research couldn't end in failure, not when they were so close. Power levels spiking, called out Dr. Yun Li from her station. Containment field at 83% and dropping. Jin took a deep breath and made a series of precise adjustments. rerouting coolant flow, adjusting quantum matrix harmonics. The other scientists in the underground lunar facility watched with tense expressions. This was the 47th test of the quantum displacement drive. The previous 46 had ended in failure. Containment at 70%. Ian reported, her voice steady despite the danger. 65%. Jin ignored the beads of sweat running down his face and focused entirely on the readouts. He had spent half his life on this project. His hands flew across the controls, making minute adjustments to the quantum field generators. Injecting stabilizing particles, he announced. Recalibrating field integrity. For 3 tense minutes, the room was silent except for the hum of equipment and the occasional status update from Yun. Then, gradually, the alarms began to quiet. The core's pulsing glow stabilized into a steady, brilliant blue light. Containment field holding at 92%. Yun said, disbelief in her voice. Power output. Power output is 300% higher than projected. Jin stared at the drive core through the observation window. The quantum displacement field had finally stabilized. After 25 years of secret development, humanity had created a propulsion system that would revolutionize space travel, a system the Galactic Council believed was centuries beyond Earth's capabilities. We did it, Jin whispered. Then louder, we did it. The room erupted in cheers and embraces. Scientists who had worked together for decades finally saw their life's work succeed. Jin walked over to Eun, his oldest friend and colleague, and clasped her shoulder. 25 years, she said, shaking her head in wonder. Worth every minute. Jin laughed, the tension draining from his body. The Council thinks we're still working with fusion drives. Their surveillance drones only see what we want them to see. Later that day, after the successful test had been documented and reports sent to Earth Command, Jin and Eun stood in the observation dome of the lunar facility. Earth hung in the black sky, beautiful and blue. Admiral Kim would be proud, Eun said softly, referring to the legendary Hannah Kim who had started the Terran Defense Initiative decades earlier. The Admiral had died 10 years ago, but her vision had guided Earth's secret technological development. She knew this day would come, Jin agreed. The quantum drive changes everything. We can outmaneuver any Council ship now. And they have no idea, Eun added with a small smile. The next morning, Jin boarded a transport ship bound for the Arcturus Research Station. The journey that once took weeks now took only days, thanks to earlier human innovations that remained hidden from Council observers. Arcturus Station orbited a red dwarf star 12 light-years from Earth. On official records, it was listed as a minor mining and research outpost. In reality, it was humanity's largest shipyard, concealed within a massive asteroid field. Commander Ta Kim met Jin at the docking bay. Though only 40, Ta had already earned a reputation as one of Earth's most brilliant ship designers. Dr. Park, Ta greeted him with a firm handshake. Congratulations on the quantum drive breakthrough. You're just in time for the final inspection. They walked through bustling corridors where engineers and workers hurried about their tasks. Everyone wore the simple uniforms of a mining operation, maintaining the station's cover story in case of unexpected visitors. Council observation drone passed through the system last month, Ta mentioned as they entered a secure elevator. It scanned what appeared to be a standard mining operation with a few outdated defensive ships, never detected the actual station. The elevator descended into the heart of the asteroid. When the doors opened, Jin gasped despite having visited before. They stood at the edge of an enormous artificial cavern carved into the asteroid. Below them was the newest addition to Earth's secret fleet, the TSS Shadowblade. Unlike the bulky, functional ships that Earth showed to the Council, the Shadowblade was sleek and predatory. Its dark hull seemed to drink in the light rather than reflect it. The stealth destroyer is complete, Ta said with pride. Its hull is coated with sensor-absorbent materials that make it nearly invisible to standard detection systems. And now, with your quantum drive. It will be the fastest ship in known space, Jin finished. They took a smaller elevator down to the ship's level. Workers were making final adjustments to external components, but the vessel was essentially complete. Jin followed Tai up the boarding ramp and into the ship's interior. "The command center is this way," Ta said, leading him through corridors lined with technology that would shock the council representatives who still thought of humans as primitives. The bridge of the Shadow Blade was a marvel of efficiency. Holographic displays showed ship systems, tactical information, and sensor readings. The captain's chair sat at the center, surrounded by workstations for navigation, weapons, and communications. "We've incorporated everything we've learned over the past 25 years, Tai explained. Adaptive shielding based on council technology we managed to study. Weapon systems that use principles similar to their ion cannons, but modified with our own innovations." Jin approached a terminal and examined the specifications for the quantum drive installation. "How soon can my team begin integrating the new drive system?" "We're ready whenever you are," Tai replied. "This is just the beginning, Dr. Park. The Shadow Blade is the first of its class. 5 more are under construction here and at Titan Base. The fleet is growing." Later, they stood in the observation lounge overlooking the shipyard. Beyond the Shadow Blade, Jin could see workers moving around several other construction bays, where new vessels were taking shape. 25 years ago, we could barely reach Mars efficiently, Jin mused. Now look at us. Ta nodded, all hidden in plain sight behind asteroid bases and false shipping manifests. The Council still sees Earth as a compliant protectorate, happy with the scraps of technology they've allowed us. "How many ships now?" Jin asked. 117 combat-ready vessels across the 3 hidden shipyards, another 43 under construction. Ta's expression grew serious. "Admiral Song believes we need at least 200 before we can consider revealing ourselves." Jin thought about that. Admiral Min Song had taken over Earth's defense forces after Hannah Kim's death. She was cautious, methodical, traits that had served the secret program well. "And the other protectorates?" Jin asked. "Have we made contact with any of them?" Ta hesitated before answering. Unofficial communications with the Tellurian representatives suggest they're in a similar position. The Council has held them back for centuries. They might be potential allies when the time comes. Jin watched as a team of engineers tested the Shadow Blade's sensor-absorbent hull with scanning equipment. The readings showed the ship practically disappearing from detection. "The Council has no idea what's coming," Jin said quietly. "That's the way we want it," Tai replied. "For now, we remain the obedient children of the galaxy, learning, watching, preparing." Jin thought about the quantum displacement drive, the culmination of his life's work. Soon it would be installed in the Shadow Blade and tested in actual spaceflight. If successful, it would be replicated across the fleet. 25 years, he said. "I wonder what the next 25 will bring." Ta smiled. "Freedom, Dr. Park. True freedom among the stars." As they turned to leave, Jin took one last look at the growing fleet. Humanity had been patient. They had played the long game, appearing to accept their subordinate status while secretly building strength. One day soon, the Council would discover just how much their primitive protectorate had grown up. And Jin couldn't wait to see their faces when that day came. The emergency alert woke Governor Shin from a sound sleep. He fumbled for the communicator beside his bed as the colony's warning sirens began to wail outside his window. "Governor, we have multiple unknown vessels approaching Titan Prime," reported the colony's security chief. "They're not responding to hails and moving fast." Shin rushed to the window of his home. In the night sky above the colony's main dome, he could see bright flashes of light. Ships entering the atmosphere. This wasn't a scheduled transport arrival. "Implement emergency protocols," he ordered. "Get people to the shelters." But it was already too late. The first energy blast struck the colony's main power station. The shockwave shattered windows throughout the settlement. Shin was thrown to the floor as his home trembled. Outside, the screams began. Similar scenes played out across 3 human colonies that day: New Eden, Titan Prime, and Aurora's Haven, all settlements established beyond Council space in regions deemed of low strategic value. All attacked without warning by warships bearing unfamiliar markings. Aboard the TSF Vigilant, Captain Su Yun received the distress calls. As one of Earth's few publicly known military vessels, the Vigilant was officially on a routine patrol. In reality, it was monitoring the secret supply lines to the colonies. Multiple emergency transmissions from all 3 outer colonies, reported the communications officer. They're under attack. Su watched in horror as the sensor data came in. Dozens of warships were bombarding the colonies. The few defensive systems the settlements had were quickly overwhelmed. "We're 6 hours away at maximum speed," the navigation officer reported. Sue's hands tightened on the arms of her chair. "Send immediate alert to Earth Command. We're moving to assist." But by the time the Vigilant arrived at New Eden, there was nothing left to save. The colony's structures were reduced to burning rubble. The atmosphere was thick with smoke and dust, and the attacking ships were gone. The death toll across all 3 colonies would eventually be tallied at 14 million souls. Families who had sought a new life beyond the restrictive borders of Council space. Pioneers who believed humanity's future lay in peaceful expansion. 3 days later, Captain Su Yun stood before the Galactic Council. She had been ordered to present Earth's case and seek justice for the slaughtered colonists. Behind her stern expression, rage burned. "The evidence is conclusive," she stated, activating a holographic display. "These are the ships that attacked our colonies. Our analysis identifies them as belonging to the Vorax Empire, a species from the Galactic East." The 7 council members watched the footage impassively. None showed visible reaction to the images of destroyed homes and dead civilians. "The death toll is in the millions," Su continued. "These were peaceful settlements with minimal defenses. They posed no threat to anyone." The Arcturian delegate, a tall being with crystalline features, spoke first. "The colonies you speak of were established outside Council-approved territories. We have no jurisdiction there." Su clenched her jaw. "We're not asking for jurisdiction. We're asking for justice, for assistance in holding the Vorax accountable for this massacre." The insectoid Vespian representative clicked its mandibles. "The Vorax are not members of the Council. We have limited diplomatic channels to them." "Then help us defend against further attacks." Su pressed. "Our protectorate status extends only to Earth and Council-approved settlements," interrupted the amphibian counselor. "Your species was advised against establishing colonies in unregulated space." The Arcturian delegate leaned forward. "This is unfortunate, but natural selection at work," he said coldly. "Perhaps you should have remained closer to Council protection." Su stared in disbelief. "Millions of people are dead, and we sympathize with your loss," said the Lumidian representative in a tone that suggested anything but sympathy. "However, the Council must maintain clear boundaries. If we intervene whenever a protectorate faces consequences for ignoring our guidance, it undermines the entire system." Su realized then that no help would come. The Council had written off the human colonies and the millions of lives lost as a regrettable but necessary lesson. "I understand the Council's position," she said tightly. "Earth will take this under advisement." Back on her ship, Su contacted Earth Command immediately. "They refused to help," she reported. "They as much as said we deserved it for expanding beyond their approved boundaries." On the secure view screen, Admiral Hannah Kim's aged face hardened with resolve. At 73, she had remained the driving force behind humanity's secret military buildup. Though officially retired, she served as special advisor to the current defense chief. "Return to Earth immediately, Captain," she ordered. "We have much to discuss." 24 hours later, Su stood in the underground command center beneath the lunar surface. Around the strategic table sat Earth's military and political leadership, including Admiral Hannah Kim. "The Council has abandoned us," Sue concluded her report, and intelligence suggests the Vorax are preparing to attack the remaining outer colonies. They've identified humans as easy targets. Admiral Kim looked at each person around the table. For 28 years, we have hidden our true strength, she said. We've appeared weak and compliant while building our forces in secret. We did this believing that one day we would need to stand on our own. She rose from her chair, her movements slow but deliberate. That day has come. General Ja Park, the current defense chief, spoke next. Our latest intelligence confirms that the Vorax fleet is regrouping near the Centauri border. They plan to attack our mining operations there within 48 hours. How many ships? Asked the UN Secretary General. Approximately 120 vessels. General Park replied. Mostly destroyers and cruisers, with a few capital ships. Admiral Kim's eyes were steely. It's time to show our true face to the galaxy. General Park, you have my full support. The general nodded grimly. We're ready. Admiral Kim looked at each face around the table once more, then made the historic decision that would change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. Deploy the fleet, she said firmly. All of it. 2 days later, the Vorax battle group approached Alpha Centauri with confidence. Their previous raids had met no significant resistance. The human colonies had fallen easily, providing valuable resources and a few slaves. This species was clearly as weak as the Council's report suggested. Fleet Commander Vorax stood on the bridge of his dreadnought, anticipating another easy victory. The sensors showed the small human mining facility ahead, with just a few defensive satellites that posed no threat. Weapons range in 10 minutes, reported his tactical officer. No signs off. The officer stopped mid-sentence, staring at his console in confusion. Report, Vorax demanded. New contacts appearing. Everywhere. Hundreds of them. Space seemed to ripple as ship after ship appeared around the Vorax fleet. Not the simple vessels the Vorax had expected, but sleek, advanced warships unlike anything in their records on human technology. Aboard the TSS Shadowblade, now the flagship of humanity's fleet, Captain Todd Kim gave the order that humanity had prepared for nearly 3 decades. All ships engage targets as planned. Drone swarms deploy on my mark. 200 advanced human warships moved into precise formation around the surprised Vorax fleet. From their hulls, thousands of small, autonomous combat drones launched, creating a glittering cloud of deadly weapons. The Vorax fired first, energy weapons lashing out at the nearest human vessels. But the shots dissipated harmlessly against shimmering barriers. The phased shield technology that Dr. Jin Park had developed 5 years earlier. They can't penetrate our shields, reported Ta's tactical officer with satisfaction. Ta nodded. Show them what humanity is truly capable of. The human fleet opened fire. Advanced weapons that combined reverse-engineered Council technology with unique human innovations tore through Vorax ships. The drone swarms penetrated enemy vessels, disabling systems and creating chaos. Aboard his flagship, Vorax watched in disbelief as his fleet was systematically dismantled. Impossible, he growled. The Council reports said humans were primitives. Where did these ships come from? His tactical officer had no answer, too busy trying to coordinate a defense against weapons their shields couldn't stop and drones that seemed to bypass their security systems with ease. Order a retreat, Vorax finally commanded. But it was too late. The human fleet had encircled them completely, cutting off all escape routes. The battle that the Vorax had expected to be a simple raid had turned into their worst nightmare. 6 hours after it began, the battle ended. The Vorax fleet was destroyed or captured, with only a few ships escaping to carry word back to their empire. Human casualties were minimal. The advanced shields had protected the fleet effectively. On Earth, crowds gathered in cities around the world as news of the victory spread. For the first time, people saw images of the true extent of human military power, the ships, weapons, and technology that had been developed in secret for nearly 3 decades. In the Lunar Command Center, Admiral Hannah Kim watched the battle reports with quiet satisfaction. Her gamble had paid off. Humanity had revealed its strength when it mattered most. "Send word to the Galactic Council," she instructed General Park. "Inform them that Earth has successfully defended itself against the Vorax aggression, and request an emergency session to discuss our status." As reports of the battle spread across galactic communications channels, the Council representatives received the news with shock. The Arcturian delegate, who had dismissed the human plea for help days earlier, stared at the battle footage in disbelief. Humanity had hidden its true capabilities for decades, and now the galaxy would never see them the same way again. The Grand Council chamber hummed with tension as species from across the galaxy gathered for the emergency session. News of the human victory over the Vorax had spread quickly, causing shock and disbelief throughout Council space. Delegates from dozens of worlds whispered among themselves as they waited for the proceedings to begin. Commander Jai-Ho Park stood with his small delegation at the center of the chamber, feeling the weight of countless alien eyes upon them. As Admiral Kim's chosen representative, he carried the future of humanity on his shoulders. At 42, Jai-Ho had spent his entire adult life in Earth's secret defense program, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. The 7 High Counselors entered through ornate doors, their faces showing varying degrees of concern and anger. Behind them came a tall, gray-skinned being wearing elaborate robes of office, the Council Arbiter, responsible for maintaining order during disputes. "This emergency session is now convened," announced the Arbiter, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. "We are here to address the recent revelations regarding Earth forces and their engagement with the Vorax." On the massive screens behind the council table, footage began to play showing the human fleet in battle. The advanced warships, the drone swarms, the phased shield technology, all capabilities that Earth had kept hidden for decades. The chamber grew quieter as the attendees watched with stunned expressions. The Arbiter turned to face Jai-Ho directly. "Explain yourselves," he demanded, his voice sharp with authority. For 28 years, Earth has presented itself as a compliant protectorate while secretly building military forces in direct violation of Council regulations. Jai-Ho met the Arbiter's gaze steadily. "We did what you refused to do: protect innocent lives. Your colonies were established beyond approved territories," snapped the Vespian counselor, mandibles clicking in agitation. "The protection agreement," Jai-Ho interrupted, "was never meant to protect us. It was designed to control us." Gasps echoed through the chamber at this breach of protocol. No protectorate representative had ever interrupted a High Counselor before. Jai-Ho reached into his pocket and removed a small device. "With your permission, Arbiter, I would like to present evidence." The Arbiter hesitated, then nodded curtly. Jai-Ho activated the device. Above the chamber floor, a massive hologram appeared, displaying thousands of documents, internal council communications, classified reports, secret directives, all focused on one thing: the systematic suppression of developing species. "For centuries," Jai-Ho said, his voice carrying throughout the silent chamber, "the Council has deliberately stunted the growth of protectorate species. You provided just enough technology to make us dependent, while withholding anything that might let us become true equals." He gestured to specific documents that enlarged as he pointed to them. "You deliberately stunted our growth," he continued, "just as you did to the Talarians, the Novan Alliance, and dozens of others." The chamber erupted in murmurs as representatives from those species and others studied the evidence with growing outrage. "These documents are fabrications," declared the Lumidian counselor, her 4 arms gesturing dismissively. "Earth has created this disinformation to justify their deception." "The documents are genuine," came a new voice. A Talarian representative stood from his seat, his scaled skin flushing with emotion. "We have suspected this for generations but lacked proof. This matches our own records." "As does it match ours," added a representative from the Novan Alliance, her voice trembling with suppressed anger. The Arcturian counselor rose from his seat, crystal features glinting under the chamber lights. This is irrelevant. Earth has violated the most basic terms of protectorate status by developing military technology in secret. This cannot go unpunished. Punishment. Jaiho's voice was incredulous. 14 million humans died while you stood by and did nothing. You told us it was natural selection at work when the Vorax slaughtered our people. He stepped closer to the council table. We came to you seeking justice, and you turned us away. What choice did we have but to defend ourselves? The council has procedures, insisted the amphibian counselor. Proper channels for such matters. Procedures designed to delay. Channels that lead nowhere. Jaiho shook his head. How many other species have come before you seeking help, only to be told to wait, to follow protocols while their people died? The tension in the room grew palpable as more representatives from mid-tier species began to stand, showing their support for Earth's position. The Dracanian counselor, a heavily built reptilian who rarely spoke during public sessions, suddenly pounded a fist on the table. Enough of this insolence. Guards, seize the human delegation. They will be detained until a formal inquiry can be conducted. From alcoves around the chamber, Dracanian security forces, the Council's military enforcers, moved forward, weapons ready. The human delegation stood their ground, though they were badly outnumbered. I wouldn't recommend that, Jaiho said calmly. The Dracanians continued to advance. Admiral, Jaiho said, seemingly to thin air, it appears the Council prefers force to diplomacy. A voice echoed through the chamber, elderly but strong, filled with quiet authority. It was Admiral Hannah Kim, speaking through a communication link. Perhaps, said the Admiral, they should look outside. The massive view screens that lined the upper walls of the chamber suddenly switched from battle footage to live exterior views of the space surrounding the Council homeworld. There, hanging in perfect formation, were 300 human warships. They had appeared without warning, bypassing the planet's early warning systems using stealth technology that the Council hadn't known existed. The chamber fell into stunned silence. This is an act of war, roared the Dracanian counselor, rising to his full height. Jaiho remained calm. No, this is an act of negotiation. We came in peace, hoping to present our case fairly. Your response was to attempt to detain our representatives. We simply ensured we had appropriate leverage. You threatened the Council homeworld. The Arbiter's voice shook with disbelief. We protect our delegation, Jaiho corrected, just as we protected our colonies when you refused to help. The ships will take no aggressive action unless provoked. The 7 counselors huddled together, speaking in urgent whispers. The Dracanian security forces remained frozen in place, awaiting orders. Finally, the Lumidian counselor spoke. Withdraw your vessels, and we will discuss your concerns. Jaiho shook his head. I'm afraid that time has passed. Humanity will no longer accept the status of protectorate. We come before you as equals, or not at all. Preposterous, sputtered the Vespian. One military victory does not change the order of galactic civilization. Look around you, Jaiho said, gesturing to the chamber where dozens of representatives from other protectorate and mid-tier species had risen to their feet. It's not just humanity that seeks change. The Tellarian representative stepped forward. The Tellarian worlds stand with Earth. For too long we have been held back, our development restricted. No more. The Novan Alliance joins this position, declared the representative. One by one, representatives from 15 different species declared their solidarity with Earth's stand. The Council members watched in growing alarm as the chamber divided before their eyes. The Arbiter raised his hands for silence. This is unprecedented. The Council requires time to consider these developments. Of course, Jaiho agreed. But understand this. The galaxy is changing today. The old hierarchy cannot stand. Outside, the human fleet remained in position, a silent reminder of how much had changed. Vessels from other species began to move into formation alongside them, ships that had been hidden in nearby systems, waiting for this moment. In the Lunar Command Center, Admiral Hannah Kim watched the proceedings through a secure link. At 73, she had dedicated her life to preparing humanity for this day. Now she watched as Jae-ho, once her junior officer, reshaped the galaxy. "Reports coming in, Admiral," said her aide. "The Talarians have revealed their own hidden fleet. The Novans, too. More species are joining every hour." Hannah nodded, a small smile on her weathered face. "We never sought to stand alone, only to stand as equals." Back in the council chamber, the councilors had retreated for an emergency private session. The representatives of the various species mingled on the chamber floor, centuries of artificial divisions beginning to dissolve. Jae-ho found himself surrounded by delegates from worlds he had only read about in classified briefings. They had all suffered under the Council's restrictive policies. All had been kept from their full potential. "How did you manage to build such a fleet in secret?" asked the Talarian representative in amazement. Jae-ho smiled. "The same way you did, I suspect. When they expect you to be primitive, it's surprisingly easy to hide in plain sight." Hours later, the council returned. Their expressions were grave as they took their seats. The arbiter stood at the center of the chamber and raised his arms for attention. After careful deliberation, he announced, "The council recognizes that a new approach is needed. We propose a galactic summit, with all species represented, to establish a more equitable framework for interstellar relations." Jae-ho caught the reluctance in the arbiter's voice. This wasn't a willing concession. It was capitulation in the face of overwhelming force. The combined fleets of Earth and its new allies had given the Council no choice. "Humanity accepts this proposal," Jae-ho replied formally. "We look forward to building a new galactic order, together." As the session adjourned, Jae-ho knew this was just the beginning. Centuries of Council dominance wouldn't end overnight. There would be resistance, perhaps even conflict. But today, everything had changed. The galaxy would never be the same again. The orbital platform above Earth glowed with lights as shuttles arrived from across the galaxy. 1 year had passed since the confrontation at the council chambers, and today would mark the beginning of a new era. 27 species had traveled to Earth for the historic signing of the Galactic Charter. Admiral Min Park stood by the massive windows of the reception hall, watching the Earth rotate slowly below. At 56, he had recently been promoted to lead Earth's defense forces. His mentor, Admiral Hannah Kim, now 84 and in failing health, had insisted on attending today's ceremony, despite her doctor's concerns. "Quite a view, isn't it?" said a voice behind him. Min turned to find Dr. Jin Park beside him. The scientist had aged since their early days working on the quantum drive, but his eyes still held the same curiosity and intelligence. "I never imagined we'd be hosting a galactic summit," Min admitted. "When Admiral Kim first launched the defense initiative, we just wanted to protect Earth." Jin nodded. "And now we're reshaping the galaxy." Across the hall, delegates from the 27 allied species mingled together. Former enemies now chatted amicably, finding common ground after centuries of council-enforced separation. The Talarians, with their scaled skin and formal manners, discussed trade possibilities with the avian Kithra. The crystalline Honor shared stories with the amphibious Mril. Even a small delegation of reform-minded council species had come, seeking reconciliation. Admiral Park called an aide, approaching quickly. "The ceremony will begin in 20 minutes. Admiral Kim has arrived and wishes to speak with you." Min followed the aide to a private room where Hannah Kim waited. The years had bent her frame, but her eyes remained sharp and alert. She sat in a hover chair, conserving her strength for the signing ceremony. "Min," she said warmly, "the day has finally come." He bowed slightly to his mentor. "Thanks to your vision, Admiral. None of this would have happened if you hadn't convinced Earth to prepare secretly all those years ago." Hannah waved away the praise. I only started the process. You and countless others made it succeed. She gestured for him to sit beside her. Are you ready for what comes next? The transition will be challenging, Min acknowledged. Some council worlds still resist the new order. They'll adapt or be left behind, Hannah said firmly. The old ways cannot continue. The galaxy was stagnating under their control. A chime sounded, indicating that the delegates should move to the Grand Chamber for the signing ceremony. Attendants came to help Admiral Kim, but she waved them away, controlling her hover chair herself. I may be old, she said with a smile, but I can still pilot a chair. The Grand Chamber had been designed specifically for this historic occasion. A round table dominated the center, with 27 seats arranged equally around it. Above the table, a holographic display showed the combined territories of the allied species, nearly a third of the known galaxy. As Hannah Kim entered, the assembled delegates fell silent, then burst into applause. Her reputation had spread across the galaxy after the confrontation with the Council. To many species, she represented hope after centuries of suppression. The ceremony began with speeches from various representatives. The Tellarian elder spoke of centuries of forced technological stagnation. The Novan chancellor described how their scientific advances have been repeatedly blocked by council regulations. One after another, the delegates shared similar stories. When it was Earth's turn, Admiral Kim guided her chair forward. Her voice was soft but clear, amplified by the chamber systems. 130 years ago, humanity looked up at the stars and wondered if we were alone, she began. 29 years ago, we learned we were not alone, but also that we were considered insignificant by those who came before us. She paused, looking around at the gathered representatives. We did not seek to become a galactic power, Hannah continued, but having become one, we choose to build bridges rather than walls. The old council hoarded knowledge, believing that control came from creating dependency. We believe that true strength comes from cooperation and sharing. She gestured to the document displayed before them, the new Galactic Charter. This charter establishes not a new council, but an alliance. No species will stand above others. Technology will be shared, not restricted. And never again will developing worlds be told they must wait centuries before being considered equals. The signing began, each delegate approaching the table to place their mark on the historic document. Traditional signing methods varied wildly. The Kithra used feather imprints, the Mrel used skin secretions, the Honor used crystal shards. Each was accommodated, the diversity celebrated rather than standardized. When all 27 signatures were complete, the chamber erupted in cheers. Outside the station, ships from all allied species performed a coordinated light display visible from Earth's surface. The planet below would remember this day for generations to come. 6 months later, Min Park stood on the red soil of Mars, watching as the final construction elements were put in place on the Galactic Academy. The massive complex sprawled across the Valles Marineris, utilizing both the surface and underground caverns. The first students arrive next week, said Dr. Yun Li, who had been appointed as the Academy's first director. Over 3,000 from 42 species, including some from the former Council worlds, Min noted with satisfaction. Yun nodded. 7 have applied for membership in the Alliance. The others are watching carefully. They walked through the central plaza where statues representing each member species stood in a circle. At the center was a simple monument, a stylized galaxy with all known species represented as equal points of light. Admiral Kim would have loved to see this, Min said softly. Hannah had passed away 2 months earlier, just after approving the Academy's final design. She saw enough to know it would succeed, Yun replied. Her vision lives on. The Academy would serve many purposes: education, research, cultural exchange. But its most important function was to ensure that technological knowledge would be shared equally among all species. No longer would advanced worlds hoard their discoveries. Here, the brightest minds from across the galaxy would work together. The first research projects are already being organized, Yun explained, as they toured the laboratories. The Talarians are leading a group on sustainable terraforming. The Novans are working with 6 other species on faster-than-light communications, and we have 3 teams focusing on medical treatments that work across different biologies. Min smiled, and all of them sharing their findings openly. In one lab, he noticed a young human scientist working alongside a Talarian and an Onar. They were deep in discussion, pointing to complex holographic models floating above their workstation. There was no hint of the old barriers that had kept species apart for so long. "What's that team working on?" Min asked. "They're developing the next generation of quantum drives," Yun replied. "Building on Dr. Jin Park's work, but incorporating principles from Talarian physics and Onar crystal technology. Initial tests suggest they could increase efficiency by 300%. Across the galaxy, similar collaborations were forming. The Alliance fleet, composed of ships from all member species, patrolled the borders, ensuring peace during the transition. Former Protectorate worlds received technological assistance to help them catch up after centuries of artificial limits on their development. Not all transitions were peaceful. Several hardline council worlds refused to accept the new reality. The Dracanians, in particular, had withdrawn behind their borders, threatening war against any who approached. But most species recognized that the old order was gone forever. 1 year after the Academy opened, Min Park stood on the observation deck of the TSS Unity, the Alliance's flagship. The massive vessel combined technologies from 12 different species, creating something entirely new. Around it flew ships of all designs and origins, united under the Alliance emblem. The fleet was on a diplomatic mission to a newly discovered world whose inhabitants had just achieved spaceflight. Unlike the old Council, which would have imposed protectorate status and restrictions, the Alliance came with offers of genuine partnership. As the strange new planet grew larger in the view screen, Min thought about how far they had come. From a single determined admiral's vision to a galactic alliance that spanned thousands of light years. From secrets and hidden preparation to open cooperation and shared knowledge. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the planet," reported his communications officer. "They're welcoming us." Min nodded. "Tell them we come in peace, seeking friendship between equals." As the message was sent, he gazed out at the stars surrounding them. Where once humanity had been alone, then subordinate, now they moved through the galaxy as partners in something greater than themselves. The universe, Min reflected, was vast beyond comprehension. But working together, there was no limit to what they might achieve. And that was Admiral Hannah Kim's true legacy. Not just protecting Earth, but creating a galaxy where protection gave way to cooperation, where walls became bridges, where the stars belonged to everyone.